Future Proof 2023. How's everybody doing? Future Proof, make some noise for me real quick. I love that Monday morning energy. You guys are bringing it. And thank you so much for coming. My second time having the chance to come here. If you're a first timer, enjoy it. It's a heck of an event. And I got a little bit of energy as we jump into talking about RIA custody. And I'm excited because I am joined by two people who are kind of responsible for a lot of the change and upheaval that John mentioned in the space. I'm joined by Richard Lofgren of Goldman Sachs, Mazi Bahadori of Altruist. Gentlemen, a lot has changed in the RIA custody space, and it's kind of your fault. And we'll get into exactly why. You want to claim any responsibility for what you've done before we get into the meat of the conversation?
I'm going to blame Mazi.
I'm going to blame Richard as well. So.
Altruist did it, Goldman Sachs did it, nobody did it. But yeah, like John mentioned, it's a very hot button topic right now. It's a top of mind topic for a lot of reasons. RIA is still the fastest growing segment in financial advice market, kind of the final frontier. So naturally with all that, there's a lot of competition, a lot of choice, a lot of opportunity right now. But things are different. We know that the long-standing big three is kind of no more. We'll get into that a little bit. And kind of, again, some of the things that happened that led to those changes. There's new breakaway opportunities. There's new opportunities in technology. There's a lot to break down. And I would be remiss not to mention, like I said, some of the, I guess, devastation or change or disruption caused by the companies that these two gentlemen represent. Just this year alone, if we want to try and condense it, because if we want to talk about the last 5 years, I'd be here all morning in terms of RIA custody just this year. So Altruist, for example, becoming an all-in-one custodian, and then just a few weeks later, acquiring SSG to reshape that Schwab Fidelity Pershing three-headed monster that has lasted for so long. And Goldman Sachs keeping up with the push into the space that hit a new gear with the purchase of Folio back in 2020, continuing to keep the foot on the gas, celebrating billion-dollar onboarding of breakaway wirehouse teams time and time again this year. So, again, you guys have been busy. The space is changing. And Richard, I want to kick things off with you because choice is really at the heart of a lot of what's happening right now. Talk to me about what kind of choice exists now if you're an RIA or a breakaway team looking for a new option. What kind of choice exists now, and how are we providing more choice to those advisors?
Yeah, Justin, thank you for the question, and thanks to the Future Proof staff for putting together a great event. Thank you for the rain, which is a new thing for a Texan that hasn't seen rain in a long time. But you think about choice, and I reflect back to when I started in the business in the late '90s, and I started at the wirehouse, like I'm sure probably some people in here that started at wirehouses. And really back then it was predicated on, they told you what type of clients to pick. They told you how much they had needed to have in assets. They told you what type of solutions to be able to work with. And so really all of us have had people that maybe they didn't fit that minimum dollar amount, or they had needs that were different than perhaps a captive environment. And so right now it's all about choice, and I think that's the real foundational and fundamental piece of where we are and why we're all here today, is it's all about us making a decision around types of clients we want to serve, think about the types of solutions we want to bring to bear, and then candidly think about how we want to get paid for advice and guidance. And so for us, being in the space, we're really excited to be able to bring a new choice out to RIAs.
Absolutely. And at the same time, choice, while it opens up a lot of doors, new opportunities, new ways to kind of reshape how you want to run your business, it can be overwhelming. It can kind of feel like, I want to keep it simple. This new choice might exist, but I'm going to stick with what isn't broken. I don't want to try to fix it. Mazi, in terms of technology, talk about how we manage that overwhelming choice, or what it's like when we kind of look at the landscape of options and see everything available to us. I mean, I can barely figure out what I want to eat for dinner every night. I imagine this is a bigger choice and one with a lot more options if you're an RIA.
Yeah, no, far greater consequence if you get the dinner selection wrong than your RIA custodian. But Richard hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's absolute abundance of optionality out there right now. I think one of the things that we notice advisors need to be super mindful of is almost over optionality. It's so easy to start any sort of software company, provide some sort of solution. More often than not, you see so many of these solutions trying to look for a problem as opposed to the other way around. You see software that maybe does 150 things, but you actually only need to do about 10 of those things once a quarter. And so you're paying all this money, spending all this time, learning all of these new processes, trying to integrate that into a practice, when the reality of it is you only need to do just a half a dozen, maybe a dozen of those things on a regular basis. And so being very deliberate, very methodical about, to Richard's point, what does your practice actually look like? What are the types of clients you want to serve? How do you want to serve them? what do you want to be spending your time on? Do you want to be spending your time on back office administrative functions doing these 150 things, or do you want to spend your time on servicing and acquiring customers? And that's really where I think there's a gap right now of a lot of technology that professes to be great, but has some challenges with those solutions.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to just take a moment to remind people, if you have questions for the Q&A, please use Slido, slido.com, #futureproof2023. Get your questions in. I'll make sure that Mazi and Richard and I get to them throughout the session. So be active, get on Slido, and keep the conversation going. And I kind of want to stick with the technology piece a little bit, Mazi, and stick with you. So you mentioned all the 150 things you can do with a piece of tech, and maybe you only need to do a handful of things. In your opinion right now, as far as what's crucial, what are some of the things RIAs should be focusing on as far as their tech priorities? Where should they be looking? Okay, we need technology to do X, Y, or Z. What's that X, Y, or Z right now in the current landscape?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think everything very fundamentally starts with custody. When you think about what an RIA does, how they service their customers, you're really just dealing with three very simple things. You've got an asset sitting in an account with some sort of activity. So you've got stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. You've got joint accounts, trust accounts, retirement accounts, Roth accounts, you name it. You're buying and selling, transfers in, transfers out, corporate actions, dividends, et cetera. Literally everything else that's built for RIAs has those three sort of the atoms of custody as its foundational building block. And so when we think about where you need to be focusing your efforts and your R&D spend on any sort of technology, it very much has to do with, are there things that are making those processes simpler, easier, more efficient, so you don't have to spend time on that? You want to open accounts, you want to fund accounts, you want to bill on those accounts, you want to manage money in those accounts, you want to report on them, you want to give your clients a portal to access them, et cetera. That's really where we think RIAs need to be devoting a lot of their time, far less on a lot of really cool, fancy things that produce great reports, but you just don't get a whole lot of mileage or client benefit out of those.
And I think part of the thing that when we look at technology, it's not just about the additive side of technology, it's about the subtractive side, taking away inefficiencies, taking away problems, taking away the things that really, I would say, restrict us from spending time talking to clients, because I don't think anybody here likes spending all their time putting yellow sticky notes and using the yellow highlighter to sign here. And so I think that as both of us, we talked about envisioning the business and where we're going, it's really about a subtractive mindset of taking away some of those pain points and perhaps some nuisance things that are important in the account opening process, but there's a better and more efficient way to do it.
Yeah, I love that idea. Using our new capability to, again, simplify things by allowing us to be able to do more with the tools we have at our disposal. But I'm an old school newspaper guy. I still like highlighters. I won't hold that against you. Highlighters are a lot of fun to use. But Richard, I want to stick with you a little bit more on that piece of what is really important in what the choice really provides to RIAs, which is spending time with clients, making sure we're getting away from our screens and back in front of people. An extremely important focus for a lot of individual practitioners, teams, RIAs, you name it, want to get in front of people again. And we know that Goldman often considered maybe a newer player in the space, making that shift from just institutional and getting more into the RIA space, but not exactly like you've never worked with RIAs before, just never been able to service them directly as a custodian like you're working on now. So talk to me about the choices you're making, and what do you provide to advisors who want to do that? You know advisors want to get in front of people, so how do you select the tools to then pass on to them?
Yeah, when you think about the firm, you've heard a lot of people this morning talking about Goldman Sachs, who've been around for over 150 years, so not new to custody. I would say we're not new to advisors. A number of folks here in the audience have used a variety of products, be it GSAM solutions or some lending solutions through the bank. And so when we think about it, it's for us to be able to provide an environment and an ecosystem where advisors that use us for custody, perhaps a portion of their book of business, maybe it's all of their clientele, to be able to leverage those capabilities within the firm and be able to bring them to bear. So again, I think when you look at our platform and what we're doing right now, all it does is continue to support that level of choice that everybody's got. Again, types of clients, types of solutions, and even for those types of clients that say, this is where I want to be. So we're going to feel really great about the space and where we are.
Very cool. And I do appreciate the questions coming in via Slido. This group, not afraid of a little rain. I do like that engagement. I want to jump into a question, and I want to throw them to both of you, but Mazi, I'll stick with you first. Question we have here: do you think we'll get to a point where clients essentially self-custody and plug and play their RIAs? So a very different business model there. Your thoughts on that might actually becoming something that's tangible or makes sense in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love this question because we often think about, I think the industry tends to think about RIAs a little bit differently, and if I may offer my opinion, a bit incorrectly, in terms of very much segmenting where RIAs are and offering a set of solutions or services or products or features that try to fit them very neatly in that client segment. The reality, I think, of what we've observed is being an RIA is very much an evolution, and some RIAs tend to stay in certain areas and they may live there a little bit longer than others, but there's absolutely this evolution that exists of you may start out either at a wirehouse or at an RIA, you just launch, you hang your own shingle, you go independent, grow in asset sizes, and then some of them may want to grow and adapt and enter into some sort of IBD relationship with a correspondent, and they earn a totally brand new type of revenue share that never existed before. What I think we're seeing right now is technology is actually enabling that in a way that never existed, where if you wanted to do that 20 years ago, it would have been orders of magnitude more difficult than it is today. And to the person's question, absolutely. I think that's very much a progression in which we will eventually get to, where RIAs could pretty much plug and play just like you would any other application out there and get advantage of whole new economics, whole new customization, a whole new suite of services and features that just really never existed or were capable before.
Yeah, I think when I went independent in '99 and just the lack of choice, the lack of solutions that are out here, and it's amazing here to think about 3,000 people here that are all dedicated and passionate around covering clients in the independent space. And so when you think about where we are from an ecosystem standpoint, all of the capabilities and technology and solutions that are out there, I mean, it's just a great time to be in the space.
For sure. And this next question is directly right at you, so we'll just get to it now. And again, send those questions in. For Goldman Sachs, what's your largest competitive advantage as a custodian compared to other players?
I think at times it's the fact that we've been around. We've been here for 150 years. I think it's that vote of confidence that people have, that we've seen different market cycles over the course of many decades. And that really lends itself to us being able to be that, I would say, not safe harbor in a storm perhaps, but maybe that trusted confidant that continue to help advisors as they think about covering needs for their clients.
Right on. Before we jump back into the conversation, I'll ask the same question to you. What do you think Altruist's advantage is compared to their competitors right now in the space?
Yeah, I mean, I love it because I think the world of Richard, and it's a fantastic firm. Altruist, it's a modern custodian. We're the only custodian that's built exclusively for registered investment advisors. I think what that allows us to do when you think about the modern aspect of what we're building, brand new technology, brand new services, brand new APIs. We don't have any paperwork. We don't have any of those manual processes. There's not this legacy business that we've had to adapt to. Now, certainly, nowhere near the history and storied nature of GS, but we launched 5 years ago. Today, we offer RIA custody for over 3,000 advisors. So we've just really been able to get a lot of amazing traction because of all that modern technology that we're bringing.
Absolutely. So diving deeper into the changing landscape, and Richard made a great point about when you went independent in '99, what was out there and what was available, and kind of what wasn't out there and available, and how that's transformed now. The other transformation, we've talked about it so far from the standpoint of the RIAs. From the client side, there's also a lot of change. Who's getting service, the demand for advice. We write about it all the time at Financial Planning, is that year over year, the actual demand for financial advice has gone up every single year for the past 5 years consistently, which is great for our industry. Again, the RIA custody landscape, now an $8 trillion industry. So a lot of money to be made and a lot of money to be lost if you get it wrong. So what I want to talk about is what's changing for end clients. So what do they need, and how are you working as Goldman and also as Altruist to make sure that the RIAs who custody with you are giving that to them?
Yeah, when you think about the fact that we've got 10,000 baby boomers that are retiring every single day, you figure that the total wealth that they anticipate that the boomers are going to transfer to the millennials is somewhere in the $68 trillion number, which is hard to get your brain wrapped around that. But I think what that says overall is that there's a continued demand for advice and guidance. There's a level of complexity that's out there, and that clients are really demanding that to be able to be adequately covered and serviced on a method and a timeline of their choosing. And so for us, again, it's leveraging technology. It's leaning into that. I'm laughing because Mazi and I both talked about the fact that we don't use paper. And so for us, and a lot of times you got clients that they don't have that level of comfort with technology perhaps, and they're looking for paper. And for us to say, hey, we're coming at it from a really truly digital approach that doesn't inject paper into it. So it's a little bit of a different mindset for the end clients to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's what do clients want to be spending their time on, and what is their relationship with their advisor? This was years ago, but Fidelity did a study where they looked at thousands of examples where an advisor fired, or excuse me, where a client fired their financial advisor, and they ranked them top 10, and I think number 9 was performance, something like that. Number 1 was trust, lack of trust. And as we, as RIA custodians, think about, well, how do we want to be spending our time building software and the solutions and tools for retail clients, for their advisors, it's very much focused on how do we get the advisor out of the weeds of actually running an independent RIA and right back out to how do I go out and, again, acquire more clients or spend more time servicing clients. And that's it. Quite frankly, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing tools and solutions out there, beautiful reports you can produce, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to spend the time meaningfully building relationships with those clients, and if you don't have the technology and the custodial partner to help you do that, you're just missing the forest for the trees, quite frankly.
For sure. And I wonder, does that change the relationship between custodian and RIA? Because seeing trust rated so much higher than performance, and I'm not surprised, especially right now. The people who are getting advice are doing so in an environment full of uncertainty and concern and wanting to make sure that, hey, I'm trusting you with everything. At the same time, the RIAs who work with you are trusting you with everything. So has the relationship changed? And you guys are, again, fairly new to the space, but what's it been like? What's been a top priority for the RIAs that you service?
Yeah, I mean, for us, that's unequivocally one of the most important questions that we get, something that we spend a lot of time on. I think you just have to take a good hard look at your custodian and determine what things need to be true for me to be able to trust my custodian that they're going to be doing what's best for me. Not competing with the client, for example, is a really good example of one in which, if your custodian's exclusively serving RIAs, then there's no other business unit, there's no other line that's going to get competition for revenue, for resources, for technology spend, anything like that. And then, of course, it goes into, Richard made a great point about, are they around? Do they know what they're doing? Do they have the systems, tools, processes, people in place? We're all regulated by the same groups, FINRA, SEC, the DTCC, 53 state and territory regulators, you name it, that are constantly scrutinizing everything that you do. But being able to have a track record to say you know what you're doing, I think that becomes very critical, as RIAs, of course, are subject to a whole lot more regulatory scrutiny and oversight than they've ever been. And so they need to demonstrate they really know what they're doing in selecting a custodian as well.
Because I think when you look at the independent space, when folks leave and break away from some other call it captive environments, I think the fear factor that tries to get instilled upon every advisor is if you go independent, you're alone, that there's nobody out there. And so when we see our ability to sit with an advisor and talk through some of the things like Mazi talked about, you think about regulatory compliance, you think about trading, you think about complex lending strategies, you think about single stock strategies for clients that have got concentrated equity positions or they've got a pending sale of a company. The ability for us to sit, and again, I think it's the same level of due diligence that everybody here has with their end client. We do the same thing with the advisors as well, too, to make sure that we're a good fit.
Right on. All right, I want to jump back into some Q&A real quick and actually have 2 questions that are somewhat related, so I want to fire them both at you now. First question is, what threats, if any, does traditional custody model face from blockchain technology? And the other question is, are you thinking any potential of adding blockchain technology to the offerings in your custody services? So whoever wants to jump in there first, threats to the model because of the blockchain, and do you plan on adding that capability to what you're providing advisors?
I can take a stab. I don't necessarily see any threats to custody model from blockchain. I think blockchain technology, when you look kind of a bit under the surface, it's got some fantastic applications for investment management and custody, and then it has absolutely no business whatsoever in other areas of investment management and custody. When you look at what is the most critical thing, keeping good, clean books and records that can be quickly recalled, and they're always going to be accurate and reliable with Six Sigma precision and so on. Blockchain's actually very bad for stuff like that. You don't want something that's almost impossible to go back or just requires an incredible amount of computing power to go back and try to amend. That said, when we look at the future of settlement cycles, for example, once upon a time, equities traded a lot faster than they do today. Then we went to T5, and it's been decades of working our way back down, now at T2, eventually T1. I think we will get to T0, but blockchain technology does have some value there. These things will take time, of course. It's not like just one of us can flip the switch and do that. We've got to work in a very large ecosystem, and so the whole industry has to be ready before I think you start to see blockchain's very wide adoption in custody.
It's certainly something that I think there are a lot of people from a technology standpoint, engineering standpoint, that are thinking about how to implement that. Reflect back on, you think about online trading when it's really came into its being in the late 90s, and if you remember all of the talking heads on TV that said that's the death knell for the advisors. And as I'm looking around the number of people that are here, even in the rain, we're certainly not at the end of financial advice. But blockchain is certainly something that I think that people are thinking about how to leverage that, and again, allow us to do it better, faster, cleaner, neater for the end client.
Yeah, they might have been a little bit off on those predictions of online trading to kill the business. So, and then another question before we get back into the conversation. How are you thinking about the unique needs of RIA custody differently than Fidelity, Pershing, and Schwab? Great question. Again, we mentioned that kind of three-headed monster and some recent changes, some things that have happened in the space just over Labor Day weekend involving Schwab. So how are you thinking about things differently? What makes you stand out?
I think competition is a good thing, and consolidation is good because it gives an opportunity for advisors to take a fresh look at their business. Am I currently, my needs being serviced the way I want them to be? Is the pricing the right way? Is the technology, keeping up with the evolving needs of my clients? And so, for us, we absolutely think that, the consolidation in the space has provided great opportunities for both of us, and it's an exciting time to be in the business. Yeah,
and I couldn't agree more with Richard. I think for Altruist, it's super simple. We don't compete with our clients, full stop. All of those firms, there's a lot of things that they can do. At the end of the day, we only build RIA custody, and that's it. So for us, removing conflicts of interest and only being able to devote R&D dollars exclusively for advisors, I think really helps us mentally think about the space a lot differently.
All right, absolutely. Now, I kind of want to force you guys to crystal ball it a little bit for me on this next one. I want to talk about the future of the space. We've already alluded a lot to the change that's already taken place, but we're living in it. We're living in that reality. We're going to see what's going to happen, how much it's going to change. I imagine the next 18 months are going to be really, really busy with the current landscape that's been established from the last 2 or 3 years of changes. So looking beyond that, once we get our arms wrapped around what is, we know it's going to change again, because that's the only guarantee in any business, especially this one, is that it's going to get upended eventually with good intent. So I'll start with you, Richard. Any thoughts thinking about maybe into the future about how this space might change more, the impact that all of the new players that are going to have on the space might, affect?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's front and center for a lot of people is AI, and how do I think about AI, and how does that have a place in my business or covering clients? And I find that exciting, but what I don't think is that AI is going to be something that's going to, again, be the death knell for advisors, because even as good as technology is, the ability for AI to, rapidly come up with feedback or thoughts or that type of thing, the thing that AI is never going to be able to solve for, and I'm going to make a bold statement on this one, is that AI and technology, it's incapable of empathy. And when we think about money and you think about what we do every single day covering clients, money's an emotional issue. And so AI technology is something that we can leverage and bring in to make us more efficient, but I don't see technology as being something that's going to take the place of anybody out here.
Thoughts on the future?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at like the last 15 years of venture investment, where a lot of capital has gone towards the investment management or custodial space. Richard talked about this a little bit earlier. So much of it has been with the theory that we could remove the financial advisor. Robo-advisors just gotten tremendous amounts of funding. All that said, when you aggregate up, I mean, the RIA the RIA space, it's gone from, I think, 2.8 trillion to 8.2 trillion in just about 10 years. I mean, a fraction of that, just single-digit percent, actually has ended up in the robo space. And so I think to Richard's point, we're going to continue to see just a tremendous amount of investment in RIA custody. Now, exactly what kind of tools, what kind of solutions, whether it's AI, whether it's blockchain, something else, all TBD. It's hard to make a prediction. I kind of chuckle even with the empathy piece. I use ChatGPT every now and then to apologize to my wife if I have to work late, because it just does empathy a lot more better than I can, but still has a very long way to go. I wouldn't profess anybody use that to try to advise a client just yet, but I think we're still at the very forefront of a lot of pretty exciting tech.
Right on. And also, my wife is sitting right there, but don't tell her. I might get some of those advice from you from ChatGPT later. Don't worry about it. So I want to jump back into some Q&A. And again, want to thank everyone who sent it in questions, all my people who are holding it down in the risers in the rain. You guys are awesome. Love you for being here. I jump into the next question, which was actually a pretty good one, pretty practical one. Do you have any thoughts on how many custodians an RIA should have?
I think it's whatever the right number of custodians that are meeting the needs of the client. Technology is certainly a great thing now. I mean, it's a lot easier and seamless with APIs, as Mazi talked about, to speed the process up, and so you're less dependent upon an individual being the one that knows those different platforms as far as adding a custodian. So, I think that having multiple custodians, if it meets the needs of your clients, or you're trying to express a new solution or strategy or belief, that certainly makes sense. I mean, we won't turn somebody away if they want to give us all their money, but if they certainly want to add us to the mix, it's something that we're ready to go.
Thoughts on how many they should have? Is too many?
Yeah, I think more than one is too many. I absolutely appreciate the point, but when you think about how do you scale a practice really to infinity, and by infinity I don't mean you're going to take on 10, 20, 30, 50,000 clients, but much more, where do you be wanting to be spending your time, your energy? Having more than one, just every additional custodian you add, it adds more complexity into the process. Some RIAs, I think they've built a business that way almost, I wouldn't say by happenstance, but it's not always a very deliberate, methodical strategy. I think, again, to Richard's point, if you can do that, fantastic, but every custodian is going to have a different process, a different set of systems, a different set of people, relationships, everything that you have to learn and integrate your business to. And if that works for your practice, absolutely, that's great. But what we found is the RIAs that tend to be able to scale in a far more cost-effective, efficient way typically only have one.
Absolutely. And kind of sticking with that topic of, hey, how many folks should you custody with? Question here about what's the normal process for an RIA to add to a custody lineup? Do they move a mandated percentage of their AUM, replace a custodian, repaper? What's the process like anyway, on a logistical standpoint?
Just again, like clients, it's unique to the situation. So when you take a look at that, I think it's less about the size or the numbers of clients, and it's more about the why. What is it you're trying to solve for? What current need is not being met with the custodian? As you think about the changing landscape of what's happened with clientele, clients' wallets are growing, and those needs change and those needs evolve, and times people outgrow a subset of a custodian's capabilities, perhaps. And so that's a great inflection point for us. When we think about bringing advisors onto the platform, it's about sitting down with that due diligence process, and it's not, I would say, not too dissimilar from what all of us are doing from a get-to-know-your-client standpoint of gathering that data and understanding what those needs are.
Similar process at Altruist or anything different?
Exactly. No, very, very similar. Always wanting to find, does the solution that we provide actually fit their business? Are there things that they need? There are certainly, things that we just don't do. It's not in our roadmap. We, in theory, could do them, but they would insert quite a bit of manual work, and that's just not something that we're interested in taking on. And so doing that mutual diligence, which, as all the RIAs in the crowd know, there's a lot of that regulatory scrutiny on advisors now with this SEC administration to make sure that advisors are doing their diligence on their custodians, and helping them satisfy is a really critical step. I mean,
there's certainly enough opportunity out in the space for multiple custodians that are out there, and I think that the collaborative nature, I think all of us push each other to be a little bit better, and so again, the opportunity for us to see what other custodians are doing, I think that really helps us up our game as well too.
Completely agree.
Look at that, custodians getting along. You love to see it. All right, and then the last audience question I'll take is, how do you expect to increase revenues over the next many years? Which is a really good question, kind of a hot seat question. What will you begin to charge for that you aren't charging for now? How are you going to make some money over the next few years?
the landscape right now, when I think about this business, this is a really exciting business to be in. What other business can you be in where you've almost got a limitless amount of dollars that are coming into the business? You're constantly got clients that are retiring. People are rolling over 401ks. We've come out of the defined benefit to a defined contribution phase. So all of those types of things really set up the business. I mean, you get some market appreciation, some market growth. Advisors make more money. So when we think about revenue for us, it's just continuing to be in front of advisors and offering those needs and really allowing them to make the decision on how they might be able to remunerate us for what we're doing for the clients.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very, very simple flywheel model. Revenue absolutely doesn't exist anywhere in that flywheel, where for us it's all about if we're delivering really amazing advisor and client outcomes, revenue takes care of itself. And so for us, focusing again on what are those advisor outcomes, what are those client outcomes, are we building a best-in-class modern experience? The money always follows if you get the solution right.
Absolutely. And with that, we are actually just hitting at the end of our time and actually nailed it. So very proud of our efficiency and our time management. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank my panelists again, Richard Lofgren of Goldman Sachs, Mazi Bahadori of Altruist for financial planning. I'm Justin Mack. I want to thank you guys for coming out and enjoy Future Proof 2023. It's only going to get wilder from here. Make sure you have a good time and stay as dry as possible. Thank you, everyone.